Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're at Bohemian National Cemetery just a little bit north of Chicago, and this is a really historic and interesting cemetery, and one of the more notable and more visited things here is the Eastland Disaster Memorial. So we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to check out some other interesting grave sites and mausoleums and all that kind of stuff. So come along, let's see what we can find. Now, one of the amazing things about visiting cemeteries like this is the architecture and the stones and the designs and everything else, and this place is no different. Check this out. This is the Jelinek gravesite. Julie Jelinek, Josepha, 1874 to 1936. And this statue over here also caught my eye. Take a look at this. Frank Jerolim, 1898 to 1936. Some of these statues are just incredible. Here's Joseph, 1901 to 1920. I like how on some of these older ones it has photos of the people. It's a nice touch. Looks like there's lots of visitors here today, and none of them human. We'll walk down this way here because I see not only a lot of statues, but I see something that looks a little bit creepy, and I'll show you that in just a second. But sometimes it's nice to just stop and look at some of the interesting graves along the way. This is the Napper plot. It says Dr. B. Anthony Napper, 1861 to 1925. We'll keep going this way. And as you can see, there's a lot of statues in this cemetery. There's just tons of them. And we're not too awful far away from the city. But there's some incredible cemeteries in Chicago. Thomas J. Andel, family plot. Now, can you see up here what caught my eye? If you don't see it yet, you will in a second. Something about this that just stood out. Now, you don't see too many things like this, but this kind of reminds me of the Eternal Silence statue at Graceland Cemetery. If you can see that there. Incredible, a little spooky. Here's one of the mausoleums here. I'm not even going to attempt that name. I'm pretty sure I would butcher it. But a beautiful spot here. And this cemetery is massive. It just goes on and on and on. You can see a statue right here, and there's a couple down this way here. Statues everywhere. Oh, I just love this for the holidays. Some of them get pretty creative with holiday decorations. I love that. Here's one of the older ones. Charles F. Schiller, Illinois Private, 11th Regiment, September 30th, 1883 to January 22nd, 1945. Over here it looks like there's a statue of a soldier. It's a little bit different than some of the other ones here. The name is Vanek. He doesn't really have a face, but definitely a soldier. It says Corporate Otto F. Vanek, 1894 to 1924. There's a picture of him right there. Here's another one over here. These statues are neat, but they never seem to have faces. Stefan Vukic. Vukic? Looks like he also served. If you can read that, maybe it shows up better on camera. But with the lighting, I cannot read that. Now, one of the most visited monuments here is just in front of me, and this was from the Eastland Disaster. Now, if you're not familiar with what that was, this happened on July 24th, 1915, in the Chicago River. Now, this was downtown Chicago, and it was supposed to be a 2-hour excursion. It was a company picnic, basically, and it ended up being the largest loss of life from a single shipwreck on the Great Lakes. 844 passengers were killed. But this was put in here at Bohemian National Cemetery. And as you can see, a lot of people were able to help support this project by purchasing bricks. And quite a few victims of the Eastland are laid to rest here in this cemetery. I think I read that there was over 100. But that is the Eastland right there. And this, I believe, would have been from that day. Actually, yeah, it was, because that's it right there. Very tragic. It says the Eastland was one of several large ships chartered by Western Electric Company's Hawthorne Club to transport employees and their families and friends to the employee picnic at Washington Park in Michigan City, Indiana. From a wharf on the Chicago River in downtown Chicago, over 2,500 passengers boarded the steamer Eastland for the 2-hour trip across the southern tip of Lake Michigan. As the crew readied the ship for departure, the Eastland, still partially covered or partially moored to the wharf, listed several times and rolled over on its side. 844 passengers and crew drowned, mainly trapped inside the enclosed decks of the ship. This memorial is dedicated to the victims and survivors of the Eastland disaster, as well as to the many heroes and organizations that assisted in saving lives and bringing relief to those who suffered from this tragedy. It was dedicated July of 2015. That is a really nice memorial. And they have a chair so you can sit here and visit the memorial and reflect. What a tragic event, though. This is a pretty unique grave right here. Rodina Carell Vestley. Right here in front of me is the mausoleum of Anton Cermak. If that name doesn't sound familiar, most people around Chicago would know this name, but he was a politician. He served as the 44th mayor of Chicago, and he was actually killed by a bullet that was meant for FDR, Franklin Roosevelt. He was very good friends with FDR. There's the inside of that. There's family there. Trying to see where he is in here. He is up. Hopefully you can see that okay. He's up here. Anton Cermak. Here's another angel statue. Here's a memorial that was dedicated to the veterans of the Spanish-American War. It says this was dedicated in 1926. Now there's one other section that I want to show you on the other side of the cemetery, but I happened to see this behind the war monument, and I wanted to show you this because this is pretty incredible too. This is Jan Barker. Sometimes a mausoleum or a tomb will just happen to catch your eye. This one definitely looks older. Looks like A. Kolar, 1900. Doesn't look like this one's been touched much. The way these were designed back in the day, though, it's always impressed me. They definitely took pride in building things. Now, the final part of this cemetery tour is that we're not too far away from Wrigley Field, and people around here were definitely Cubs fans. I grew up a Cubs fan, and there were a lot of other Cubs fans here, but they built a specific area here that is designed to look like the outfield wall at Wrigley Field. And this is Cubs Fans Forever, Beyond the Vines. So this is kind of a recreation of the center field wall at Wrigley Field. And they famously have vines at Wrigley Field, and they have vines here also. But everybody here on this wall was a Cubs fan. A lot of them have Cubs logos, Cubs decorations. It says, please tap here after they win. Sadly, he wouldn't have gotten very many taps this season. But everybody here grew up on the Cubs, loved the Cubs. I loved the Cubs. It's hard not to love the Cubs. Wrigley Field's classic baseball. But everybody on here was, I guess you could say, a Cubs super fan. Gotta give you a good look at this up here. But this is a very beautiful, incredible spot. And they have some of these old stadium seats. I'm not sure if these actually came from the stadium or not. Kind of looks like they could have. And because I've never been here before, we kind of have to check out the back too and see what this looks like. There's more statues back there. You could spend all day looking at this place, you really could. Okay, the back looks like it's ready for more Cubs fans. They just haven't arrived yet. But this is the Cubs fan wall, which is also one of the more visited memorials here. But that about sums it up for Bohemian National Cemetery here in Chicago. I may come back and do a more detailed video, but I did show you the most notable areas here in this cemetery. But that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining, and we'll catch you next time. Take care, everybody.